I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura. I'm the mom.
And I'm Krysta. I'm the daughter.
And together we are Family Plot. Very nice. Very nice.
I'm gonna voice crack.
Did you?
Yeah.
I did. I just thought you were late coming in, but you know, you've had a rough day. You've had a rough day, so I was just going to let it go. Well, we've got a heck of a show, but before we get to that, got to start with a little bit of housekeeping. First and foremost, if you want to help us out, a few ways you can do that. First of all, there's Patreon, which is a monthly donation, 1, 3, 5, and 10. Just, you know, if you've got the wherewithal and you want to help us out, any level of that is good. There's 3 different groups you can belong to. Team Podcast, Team Bunny, Team Spa Day. Doesn't matter. It all goes the same place, really. Also, if you can't do a monthly donation, and again, we don't hold it against anybody, you can do a one-time donation through Buy Me a Coffee. It doesn't have preset spending limits, so whatever you want to, you can throw our way. We'd greatly appreciate. Finally, the most important thing you can do is if you enjoy the show, share it on social media. If not, keep it to yourself. Now, before I get into this week's show, I do want to put out a trigger warning on it. This show, we will be talking seriously about illness and cancer. I will be keeping a lot of the details very light because that's what we do here.
Absolutely.
But just knowing that we talk about it, some people have strong feelings about either one of those. And so if it's likely to upset you, just skip it. Go on to next week's show. It's fine. You matter, you know. And what are we talking about? Well, in the early 1900s, various companies were hiring women to paint the dials of watches and other items with luminous radium paint. These women were encouraged to use their lips to point their brush tips to make it easier to paint detail. Some of the women also painted their lips and teeth with the radiant paint. However, they had been lied to about the safety of the paint they were using. Chemists and scientists working at these plants did not handle any of the product without using safety devices such as lead screens and rubber gloves. So when the girls began to develop health problems, the culprit seemed obvious. But would these companies get away with this? Find out in today's episode all about history's Radium Girls. And not the band by the same name, which I feel is sort of...
There was a band by the same name. That seems very inconsiderate and kind of...
Rude? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a group called Radium Girls. I don't know why. But first, before we dig into anything else, my Krysta has facts. Wait, let me find my claps. Where'd they go? Oh, right there.
Krysta.
Hello, creatures. Welcome back to my fact corner. I am here today. I'm your host. In the fact corner. Always. Never leaving.
In her own little corner, in her own little chair.
With her own little stars on her knees.
I put stars on my knees with pin. But they washed off very fast. That's okay.
If they didn't wash all the way off, that's why your dad knows there's stars on your knees.
It could be worse. She could have stars on her belly, and then she'd be a starbelly sneak. Too much hanging out with the sneeches on the beaches.
Oh, okay. So, Krysta, what are your facts about today?
Okay, so today's facts are about fashion. Fashionista.
Fashion. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Before we start this, I would like to say thank you to earth.org, which is where I got this fact from. Also, the facts are by Martina Igini. I'm sorry, Igini. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say her name, but I tried my best. Sorry.
Let me see it. I might be able.
Igini.
Igini. Yeah, Igini. It would be my best guess, or Igini.
Yeah, that's what I said. Igini or Igini, whichever one it is. I'm sorry. It may be something completely different. But I thank you for making
this. I think
this.
it's a heck of a try. Good job to both of you.
Okay, fact number 1. 1 billion items of clothing are produced each year. That translates to nearly 14 items for every human being on the planet. Based on these jaw-dropping high figures, it should come to no surprise that global clothing production represents the third largest manufacturing industry in the world, preceded only by the automotive and technology industries.
That's crazy. 14, and just think about how many people don't have money, that to buy clothes. Some of the poorer people in India and other places around the world.
Yeah.
Which means that the rich people are buying lots of clothes.
Mm-hmm. They're buying out stores and stuff. Like Louis Vuitton.
Like Bluey and Bingo.
No.
Oh.
Unless their kid really likes Bluey and Bingo.
Lots of kids really like Bluey and Bingo.
I like Bluey and Bingo, and I'm 13.
I'm an adult and I like Bluey and Bingo. So there you go.
There we go. Fact number 2?
Yep. Fact number 2. The average person... You know what? I was trying to read this fact in my head to the other people.
Wow.
So I'm trying to do telepathy.
Cool.
But it's not working very well because
we
they didn't
even talked about the radium yet, so that's really impressive.
Well, to be fair, I don't have my telepathy to speech headset yet. When I do, you can use it and just think it all into the podcast.
That's scary. You're gonna hear what I'm thinking.
So convenient though.
Well, yeah, it'll be scary, but good for me as your parent because then I'll know what you're planning.
Planning what?
Exactly.
What the frick? You're lucky I caught myself.
Yeah, we're a PG-13 podcast. We can say frick.
It's okay. He could find a bleep.
I have one.
He also could just edit it out. Your daddy's impressive like that.
I say it sometimes anyway.
So, fact number 2.
The average person only wears 20% of their clothes 80%.
20% of their clothes 80% of the time.
Let me explain.
Oh, good, because I was really confused on how that broke down.
Yeah, I was trying to do the math of it, and my brain just went, no.
Yep, pretty good.
I will explain in my words, then I will tell you what they said.
Okay, sounds good.
First of all, basically, I think what they're saying is you don't wear all your wardrobe all the time.
Okay, well that's fair.
Like, what you have in your closet, you only wear 20% of the time.
Okay.
Like, the majority of the time. Mm-hmm. Do you understand now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. You've got favorites, and you tend to wear those first, and then by the time you're looking at some of your less favorite stuff, oh, wait, laundry just got done, so...
Or, there's a special occasion and you don't use some of the clothes and you're just like, oh, I'm going to use this, finally. The modern shopping model, which relies on rapid production and cheap deals, encourages excessive consumption, as people are inherently attracted to low-priced goods. For individual buyers, it is also easier and more economic to snatch up the cheap clothes that have short lifespans compared to splurging on high-quality, long-lasting pieces that will very shortly fall out of popularity. Yet, despite owning large quantity of fashion items, studies show that most people wear the same things over and over, while most cases, at least 50% of their wardrobe is left untouched.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
So it's more like a, how do I say it? It's more like a sentimental value type thing.
Gotcha. Yep. I understand how that goes for sure.
Fact number 3. The target audience for fast fashion retailers is largely consumers aged to 18 and 24.
Good to know.
A 2016 study found that brands consciously target young consumers with students with low incomes, with females of this age group found to shop in fast fashion retailers more than any other demographic groups. Not surprisingly, cheap prices and trendy styles are the key attractions for such audiences. In fact, the authors of the study argue that young consumers are usually more willing to sacrifice premium quality for a lower price and more variety. It's blue.
I know! That's amazing, though.
So basically, high school and college girls will spend money on clothes that look like they want them to, but why is it blue?
I accidentally highlighted all the notes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Say
It was an
what you
accident.
want to say.
Well, I was just saying is basically what they're saying is high school and college girls are willing to sacrifice quality for looks, for style,
Sure.
for the
Yes.
style of it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Which makes a certain amount of sense.
Don't look at me. When I was in high school, I shopped at Walmart and thrift stores.
Listen, people are missing out on the good thrift store deals.
Girl, I'm telling you. You know.
can get some.
You know.
You can get some really good deals and really good outfits at thrift stores. I went to Cargo Largo the other day and got some of the best pants that were from Hot
Largo is not a
Topic.
thrift store. It is a discount store, which is even better.
They were from Hot Topic and they were $50-something before. I got them for $7.
That's right. It was awesome.
You know, Krysta is regularly awesome.
Oh, that is true. And she got that from my side of the family.
I think I got it from both of the sides of the family. Thank you very much.
You're probably right. I just was thinking. I love you, dear.
I love you too.
You have more of those umbrellas? I want one.
We're not out in the rain. Somehow my lady found these chocolate umbrellas.
from France that are absolutely awesome. Would you like one?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Mom, it's been in your mouth. Yuck.
That's not the part that worried me. I've had my tongue in her mouth as recently as earlier today.
Okay.
Where the heck do you think you came from?
Okay, this is PG-13.
We've shared germs several times over the last 13 years. 13! We have a 13-year-old and a 5-year-old. Oh, dear. Well, that escalated quickly.
Ah.
I don't find you funny.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm not laughing.
Right now, but you do find me funny. So,
Fact number 4.
fact number 4.
Fact number 4.
Fast fashion companies generate more pollution than international aviation and shipping combined.
Wow.
Given its business model, fast fashion is inherently among the most environmentally
Damaging?
Yeah, I know. You just gotta give me a minute.
I was just trying to help. I'm sorry. I'll shush and let you work through it.
Thank you. Damaging industries in the world. And it is contributing to global pollution and climate change in an astronomical way. If fast fashion were a country, its carbon emissions would rank almost as high as the entire European.
Wow.
The emissions derive not only from manufacturing process itself, but also from the shipment of clothing around the world, as well as their disposal.
And that, dear, is why any clothing purchase has a lifetime contract with me.
No.
I don't want to add to the
you are so full
pollution caused by the fast fashion industry.
No. Clothing wears out. That's why they have to keep making so many. They're aware that it wears out. Therefore, you can throw clothes away.
It's probably not the same for men's fashion. Plus, these are like big top industries. You're not getting your clothes from big top industries.
Yes, I know, Krysta.
He's just giving me a hard time.
I know, which is why I'm giving him a hard time back.
That's probably good.
Somebody should.
Wow. I can't believe we're to fact 5 already.
That's what happens when you have fast fashion facts. It goes by real fast.
Ooh. By the way, I have some puns I'll throw in later.
Oh, God.
Okay, but you really want to hear this one.
Mm-mm.
Yes, you do.
Uh-uh.
Yes, you do.
Uh-uh.
Now I gotta tell it to you. So, hey, Krysta.
What?
Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom?
What?
Because the P is silent.
What about the... It works for either one! I hate that.
Why didn't the melon get married?
Because you can't elope?
I'm so proud.
I've heard that one before.
All right, fact number 5.
I was about to go with fact number 6. Fact number 5. 60% of clothes are made with plastic-based materials.
Cool.
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Not cool. Do they not recycle?
Sources of pollution deriving from the fast fashion industry, garments are also a huge source of microplastics. A large portion of clothing made today uses durable and cheap materials such as nylon or polyester. It is estimated that approximately 60% of fast fashion items are produced with plastic-based, which is made from fossil fuels, fabrics.
I see where you're going with that.
Throughout their life cycles, these fabrics are significantly contributing to the worldwide plastic pollution crisis.
Mm-hmm.
With each wash and dry, especially the latter, sheds microfilaments through our sewage systems and end up in waterways. Researchers estimate that 500,000 tons of these contaminants each reach the ocean each year.
At least I don't buy that stuff. I shop at Walmart and thrift stores. So.
Anyway.
Oh, and occasionally Amazon.
Thank you, Krysta.
Thank you, Krysta. That was amazing. Okay, well, before I get into this, I need to let the listeners know that there were 3 technically sets of Radium Girls, one in Illinois, one in Connecticut, and then the ones we're mostly going to deal with is the U.S. Radium Corporation, which I believe was on the West Coast. And that's the one we'll talk about mostly, but occasionally I will bring out stuff from the other trials and whatnot, because it was the same story with all 3 sets of girls. Women. So let's talk about radium. What's radium? It's a radioactive element that glows in the dark. Radium had only been discovered in 1898 by Pierre and Marie Curie. Its properties at the time were not well known. Because it had been successfully used in the treatment of cancer, radium had something of a reputation as a miracle element and was incorporated into products like toothpaste and cosmetics, which makes me wonder if some women caught cancer that didn't know.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know? It's used in paints as a glow-in-the-dark material was quite common for the time, and while scientists and even the owners of these factories understood that it's radioactive and dangerous nature, these women did not. Further, the information was kept from them, especially as they were repeatedly told to point the tips of their brushes with their lips, a process that was encouraged due to its cheapness, quickness, and relative ease, even if it was more dangerous. In fact, all 3 of the Radium corporations in their training propaganda use the phrase lip, dip, paint. So you pointed the horsehair or the camel hair brush with your lips, you dipped it in the paint, and then you paint it. And then, time for the next one, you'd straighten it out again with your lips, dip it in the paint, which is how they ingested all this radium.
Absolutely.
Now, at one point, and we'll talk about this again later, at one point, when the outcry got pretty large, these corporations decided, okay, we're going to move to these glass wands. And these glass wands had natural points on them. But they were harder to paint with. And these girls weren't paid by the hour.
They were paid by the piece.
They were, yes. And so these glass wands were harder to work with. And I don't know what the speed was, but I want to say they got paid something like 3 cents a unit. And let's say it takes you 10 minutes, and I don't know if that's realistic or not, to paint a unit with your brushes. That's $6 an hour for an 8-hour day. So that's 48 a day if you're getting paid 3 cents a unit.
That's messed up. That's like a lot of work for a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's like commissioning someone and asking them for like to pay $10. That's messed up.
right. So a lot of the girls chose not to use the glass wands because it slowed them down and kept them from making money. Let's start with the U.S. Radium Corporation. It was originally known as the Radium Luminous Material Corporation. It's changed its name somewhere in the middle to try to get away from some of this. Didn't help. And they engaged in the extraction and purification of radium from carnotite ore, which was then used to create luminous paints. These paints were used on military watches and dials, and the paint was sold under the trade name Undark. Now, during this time period, they employed up to 300 people, mostly women, due to the dial's small size and fine detail needed to paint these things, misleading them that it was safe. So women were preferred because of their small hands and they were generally more agile. So it was mostly women who worked in these things. Now, these girls who worked in these factories were often called ghost girls because so much radium got on their clothes, skin, and hair that they literally glowed. And because they were told that it was safe, even though the scientists who worked at these corporations refused to work without shielding, and some of them still got radiation poisoning. But because that these girls were told it was safe, some of them wore their best dresses to work so the radium would make their dresses glow, so when they would go dancing out after work, they would stand out.
Right.
Some even painted their teeth because it gave them radiant smiles. And my thought on that is I just picture that spooky green Halloween paint on someone's teeth, and it's not an attractive idea to me, but it was kind of new in the 1910s and 20s. Now, some differences. U.S. Radium Corporation mostly did work for the U.S. military. So watches, dials, things that went in planes and stuff. The other places worked for the clock industry and watch industry. So they weren't doing military, but they were doing clock faces and watch faces. In fact, West Clocks bought a lot of these. So if you have a West Clocks clock from the 1920s, chances are it was painted by one of the Radium Girls. Now, Mary Curie, who we talked about earlier, she suffered radiation burns from radium and eventually died from radiation sickness due to her prolonged exposure. We just didn't know enough about it, and yet we're incorporating it into products like it's safe.
Right.
So, yeah, and this is, like I said, just doing the research on this got me kind of sniffly. So the first person to sort of, right, the first person to really have major health issues was Amelia Maggia. Now, they called her Molly, and for Molly, it began with a toothache. Her dentist removed the tooth. Molly then complained of a toothache in the tooth next to the one he'd been removed, so her dentist removed that tooth as well. Ulcers developed in the sockets where the teeth had been. Those too were removed. Further pain developed in her lower jaw, which was also eventually removed.
Yeah.
Finally, Molly passed on September 12th, 1922, of a massive hemorrhage as the sickness moved into other parts of her body. Doctors at the time made a best guess diagnosis of syphilis. They just didn't know.
Yeah, but that's quite a jump. I'm just saying that, wow. Oh, hey, you have pain in your teeth and then in your jaw. Oh, it must have been syphilis. Really?
Syphilis is capable of doing things like that.
Well, okay, that's fine, but I mean,
and
what are they trying to say there?
Well, you see,
I feel sorry for Molly. It's like,
and that would come back to haunt the Radium Girls.
and I think that's probably where my mind is going with that, because I know where it's gonna lead. But hey, maybe we should take a breath and check in with our sponsors.
Yeah, we should check in with our sponsors, right, Krysta?
Yeah.
So do you like the U.S. Radium Corporation right at this point, Krysta?
I don't want to kick their butts as bad as want to do Miss Asshole, but...
You mean Sharon Kenny?
I will never say her name again.
Anyway.
Okay, well, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors. Yes, dear.
I feel sponsored.
Awesome.
I bet asshole does too.
Okay, so let's pick this up. By 1925, several others had died similar deaths. Mostly female employees, but chief scientist Dr. Edwin Lehman was also among them. Now, since these deaths were occurring in the same way and at the same
Okay, but I'm
companies,
curious. Do you, in your research, did Dr. Lehman also get accused of having syphilis?
they didn't say, and by the time it happened to him,
I'm sorry, that really bothers me.
no, it should. It absolutely should. We're talking about, this is roughly equivalent with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. I mean, that wasn't much before this.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with corporations basically doing whatever the heck they feel like and it being legal. We passed laws since then to stop this kind of thing.
Absolutely. This is why.
So since these deaths were occurring in the same way and at the same companies, the public began to demand an explanation. So the U.S. Radium Corporation hired a firm to do an independent study that came back that the girls were dying from exposure to the radiation in radium.
Yeah.
So U.S. Radium Corporation disliked that report's conclusion. So they decided to conduct its own study and claim the workers had died of syphilis. Now, syphilis at the time was feared as a sexually transmitted disease, and women who got it were seen as promiscuous, and that's a kind word.
Yeah. That's putting it nicely.
So basically, what these companies did was smeared the girls who were suffering from radiation sickness.
Right. They're sick, they're dying, and hey, by the way, you're a bunch of whores.
Basically, yeah, that
Damn.
was...
Yeah.
And some of these women were suffering so badly that their jaws came loose from their skull. Didn't come off their face, came loose from their skull. Slightly different.
Not by much. I mean, it's still
Painful. You
awful.
can't eat.
Still god awful, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely, Krysta, I am not arguing that any of this isn't painful. Now, eventually, Dr. Harrison Martland became so concerned with all these similar deaths. Oh, I was wrong. Sorry. U.S. Radium Corporation was in New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey, not the West Coast.
Makes sense. Why would the government contract with a company in the West Coast way back then? It would be way too hard for them to get stuff to.
Right. So he began to investigate their deaths, and he became convinced that the girls had died from radiation poisoning. His work ran counter to the narrative that the U.S. Radium Corporation was pushing, and eventually his work made it to the trial. Now, so here we are at this point, just to sort of follow the story. And mind you, this is happening at U.S. Radium Corporation. Meanwhile, the other two corporations are just starting to see the Radium Girl thing. Sure. So they're going to go through their own issues, and they're going to get fined and punished as well. So really, from this point on, we're really just talking about the U.S. Radium Corporation in New Jersey. Because that was the trial that brought all of this to the public's attention. And it sort of set things up so for these other trials that eventually happened, the corporations really didn't have a chance, because by this time, it had been proven that, hey, this lip dip paint, bad idea.
Yeah.
Now, in Orange...
What is the legal terminology they used? It set a legal precedence for the information.
Right. So, in Orange, New Jersey, the story of the abuse perpetrated against the workers is distinguished from most such cases by the fact that the ensuing litigation was covered widely by the media.
Yeah, you know, those media, they like a good sausage tail.
Plant worker Grace Fryer decided to sue, but it took 2 years for her to find a lawyer willing to take on U.S. Radium. Even after the women found a lawyer, the litigation process moved slowly. And that is partly because U.S. Radium did everything they could to slow it down.
The corporate, it has not changed in 100 years.
So at their first appearance in court in January 1928, 2 women were bedridden, couldn't get out of bed. They literally brought these women in beds, and none of them could raise their arms to take an oath. There were a total of 5 factory workers: Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, and the sisters Quinta McDonald and Albina Larice. Now, they were dubbed the Radium Girls. These were the original Radium Girls, and they all joined this suit. Eventually, they were awarded $10,000 each, roughly equivalent to $150,000 in today's money, and $600 a year, roughly equivalent to $10,000 a year in today's money, from the U.S. Radium Corporation. Other similar companies had the same sort of fines and suits leveled against them. These helped establish the Government Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Or OSHA for short, as we know it these days.
Yeah. As well as passing and let me make sure I get this right, Occupational Disease Labor Law, which basically says that if you work in a company that is somehow unsafe and you get a disease from this unsafe work, the corporation is required, in most cases, to take care of you.
That's where our workman's comp comes from.
Right. So, and the thing is that even though they got $10,000, even though they got that $600 a year, most of them didn't live that long.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the point they actually got to trial, they were had one foot in the grave, if you will.
Right, and that's not, and that I mean, there were girls that actually had, like, where they would paint their faces or whatever, their skulls would begin to disintegrate and get holes in them. So this was not a pretty disease by any means. And if at any point the corporation had even just looked at their scientist and went, "Why are you bundled up like that?" Because this is radioactive and it's dangerous, and spread that word to the girls, maybe they wouldn't have painted their teeth. Maybe they would have, accepted the glass wands or whatever. Or maybe you should have just paid them a straight salary.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so many very simple steps could have been taken to protect those lives, and they weren't.
Right. So, and like I said, in Chicago, that company was making dials for clocks. And they had their own issues. And in fact, that company kind of went under as the trial was happening. So they basically turned over a significant portion of their former assets to the girls that were suing in that case.
Sure.
So, and I guess the thing for me is, it's so hard for me because I think of one of my kids, or like our Krysta, working in a place like this. And if something like this happened, I wouldn't stop at just suing people. I'd want blood.
Right.
See, to me, Krysta, this is worse than Sharon Kinney. Sharon's a flake, don't get me wrong. But these people knew what was going on. And they used the fact that medical doctors at the time had not seen radiation poisoning. So they're really just guessing when the first girl dies. And so I mean, you can't put down on a death certificate, maybe syphilis. So that's what it was a guess. And the corporations were like, well, that'll come in handy. And so they turned around and accused these women of, well, it's not the radium, it's their behavior after work. I mean, after all, they do go dancing.
Yeah, and women shouldn't be treated like that. No one should be treated like that.
Absolutely. It's disgusting. It's despicable. It's where businesses get, villainized because there were these business practices and unscrupulous people did things like this.
Right. And whenever I hear someone who's deeply conservative talking about removing business oversight, I think of things like this and say, no thanks, let's keep the oversight.
Yep, absolutely.
Any final thoughts, Krysta?
I genuinely think they shouldn't have let them, use their mouth for that stuff, once they saw that happening. They should have just correlated it to that and been like, oh, shoot, that's not a good thing. I think that is extremely awful, and yes, this is worse than Sharon Kenny. I do believe that. But she was also an awful person. She was not a whole business, so I don't feel like I can possibly compare that.
Right. This, we talked, was it last week or the week before, about the train heist? It's week before. Because a judge after that train heist said that called the heist sordidly violent based on vast greed.
Right. And this is definitely...
And this is far more sordidly violent and has far more to do with vast greed.
Absolutely.
I mean, whatever happened to those guys?
Wasn't enough.
The train heist guys, they didn't kill anybody. Nope. And they did their time. Not one of these guys that ran any of these corporations that made these decisions did time.
Absolutely.
And they all should have. Absolutely. So that's my final thought.
I agree. It breaks my heart.
I can't even think about it. I mean...
Well, not to jump down a rabbit hole, but where it gets me is, this was 100 years ago, but they say that radiation lasts for thousands of years. How many people who have cancer now is just a trickle-down effect from these exposures?
I don't know.
Because these people came home, they went dancing, and those kinds of things, those can lie dormant. And how many genes were twitched just enough to cause this trickle-down effect even 100 years later. And that really makes you think about how you treat your responsibilities today. That it's just like a ripple in a pool. There's so many things that could still even be coming from all of this that we just don't even know.
Now, Netflix has a movie called Radium Girls about these five. Mm-hmm. From their hiring at the factory to their death, basically. Didn't watch it. I did watch the trailer for it. It looks good. And I might sit down and watch it at some point.
Check that out, but I'm afraid it's going to be a real tough watch.
Yeah, well, I still got to finish, Last of Us first. I've only watched the first 2 episodes of that. So.
So that brings us to the end.
Yep, it does. Thanks for listening. As always, glad to have the listeners on board. Thanks to Bill Barrett, who does our theme music. If you need music for a project, Bill's your guy. You can reach him at Bill Barrett, and that last name is spelled BEHRENDT at sbcglobal.net. Thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime for helping us out with some art along with our Krysta. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show for promoting us locally. Join us next week as we look into the Dragon Triangle.
There's a Dragon Triangle? Or a Triangle Dragon?
No, it's Dragon Triangle. Roughly 100 miles off the coast of Japan is another place like Bermuda where ships and planes go missing.
Because they're eaten by dragons.
No, it's actually called, well, they just call the triangle Dragon Triangle, but the area is also called the Devil's Sea.
I see. Well, I guess I better quit asking questions so we can talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.